the social structure is and how, for us, social change is defined, or what social change really means to us. We try to explain to you that not all change necessarily qualifies as social change, and that for social change, or for a change to be described or to qualify as a social change, it must show certain evidence. Key among them is the fact that that change must be significant, right? And in doing the analysis, we should be able to demonstrate where that change emanated from. We had that understanding that these change could emanate internally or from external sources. But for it to constitute a social change, that change, the origin of which we have successfully identified, should exert influences or subsequent changes in other social institutions. And finally, the initial sphere of change, where the change originally emanated from, must also show some level of change as well. And so we really discussed that I think our first meeting. And we started demonstrating this with the various social institutions that we have discussed so far. We have discussed the political institution, look at the changes that have taken place in the chieftaincy institutions and even the non-centralized institutions. We have seen that those changes. And then we looked at, in place of the changes, what has taken place, or what has been the mode that it is upon which the need for people to distribute power, the need to maintain law and order is currently done. We look at the central political administration system and the local government structure, the various means, the hybrid political system that we talked about. Why do we say it is a hybrid? And what are the main differences? And all those other things. We did discuss that. After that, we looked at formal education, I guess last week. And we look at how these changes have also taken place. No, I think formal education was with the Tuesday group, right? We look at the changes that have taken place and all those other things. We've also looked at what do we call the family, right? We have also looked at religion, and then we are looking at the socio-demographic changes that have also taken place, the rural-urban migration. And I remember telling you people that whereas in many of the discourses on rural-urban migration, rural-urban migration has been presented as a problem. But I was also challenging you people to look beyond seeing rural-urban migration as a problem, and also endeavoring to consider it as an opportunity as well. I shared one classical example with you, and I tasked you guys to look at how you can also look at that. So today we are continuing our discussion this time around by going to look at the religious, our health institution. So we talk about the fact that a health institution is in transition. We have indicated right from the beginning that almost everything that we are discussing, we are conceptualizing it as being in transition. The reason why we are conceptualizing it as being in transition is because we do understand and we do envisage that these changes as we see it today, even though they may appear as finite, they are not necessarily finite. For analytical purposes, we can say that yes, it's finite because we see what it is. So for example, we know the political system as it is. But if you look at the debate currently, there's this whole idea that the constitution needs to be changed. People are saying that the constitution needs to be reviewed. In any case, the fact that we have the parliament that continuously make law, some of which leads to an amendment of the constitution as it is now, and these are the governance manual. indirectly is a tacit admission that things can change, and things do change anytime, right? So we consider everything that we are discussing as being in transition because changes may happen, and changes do happen. It may be for the worse, it may be for the sustenance of what it is, it may also be for the replacement of the existing order and all those other considerations. So expectation-wise, we should be able to define health. We should be able to identify the context in which health is discussed in Ghana. What are some of the cultural and sociocultural factors or issues that affect one's state of health? That's very important. We're going to do that. We look at some of the theories of health. And here we're talking about two main theories, the germ theory as against the causative theory, or what we call the human distraction, or the then we are going to look at the determinants for search of health. So if somebody falls sick, what are some of the things that the person will consider before he seeks treatment, right? Because we know that once you are sick, and as you know, the health institution is to ensure a healthy state of being, of health. And we also understand that the human nature, people do get sick. And when they get sick, we know that there are various means by which they can get well, right? So what will determine, even if it is about healthcare in the formal sector or in the informal sector, why would they go to sector A and not sector B? These are very important things that we shall discuss. And then we also look at the factors that influence the choice of a health facility, right? Thank you. So essentially, when we talk about health, what we are seeking to talk about is to say that, and I'm sure for many people who really didn't even know about the World Health Organization, the COVID has really taught us and has also opened our eyes to how important the World Health Organization is. They had been at the forefront in ensuring that the pandemic is managed, in ensuring that the effect of the pandemic is minimal and not as deliberate, challenging as it has been for many people, right? Or as it would have been for many people, right? So essentially, these are some of the major reasons why the health institution and what they say. Can you people put on off your mic and focus on the discussion instead of disturbing us? The next time somebody's mics go off rudely, I will embarrass that person. It is not good. It's very disrespectful for you to do that. You are supposed to put on off your mic. If you need to talk, you give me a signal. I'll give you that opportunity, and you do that. So please, let's respect each other. Thank you very much. So the World Health says that health is a complete state of being. Okay. Health is the complete state of being, and then he gives you various aspects of that definition. Various aspects of that definition. Okay, and I think it is important we take note of that. The point essentially is that for many people, people have taken health in a very limited sense. But what the World Health Organization then tells us is that health goes beyond the physical, the mental, the social, right? To include also the spiritual well-being. And so we say that it is not just the absence of disease. Yes, some people may have been inflicted with certain diseases, so probably they have malaria, they have typhoid, and yes, those ones. Yes, but for the World Health Organization, health is bigger than just being sick physically. That it has physical component, it has mental component, it has social component, and it has spiritual component as well, right? And so that is why the term complete state of well-being is important, right? And they emphasize certain components of it. So recently, the Mental Health Authority in Ghana had given an indication that 3 out of every 10 people you see has a mental issue. Yes, they are not mad in the typical sense of being mad. So you are not going to see them naked. You are not going to see them eating on the street. You are not going to see them doing anything that could be quite embarrassing to a normal human being. But in reality, certain things are also not well with them mentally. And sometimes we see these in the way some people respond to certain stimuli, right? And in fact, there's also this whole idea that there's a bit of madness in everybody. And sometimes even you at your own closest, private space, sometimes you are able to respond to situations in certain manner that when an opportunity is given or when something happens and that same action is played back to you, you'll probably be asking yourself, did I actually do this? Right? It tells you all those other things. All right. Now, there are certain sociocultural influences on our state of health in Ghana, and I want to share a few with you. So we are saying that health is affected by cultural beliefs. This makes the meaning and the perception of health differ from society to society. And I give a very classical example why sociocultural values and sociocultural practices impact or affect our positioning and the understanding of societal or health. Because depending on how you are socialized, based on the sociocultural values and practices within your community, there are certain things that you consider as normal, but in other places, it shall never be considered as being normal. So for example, the menarche, and as we all know, whether you are a male or a female, we all have had sisters or friends or family members who have gone through the phase. And even at our level, we have learned what it is. It's the first menstrual period of girls, so the age of menarche. Okay, in most countries in Ghana, in Africa, these phenomena passes without any incidents. Okay, and in traditional societies, these are celebrated, right, with the puberty rites. In the West, girls going through puberty are said to suffer from what they call the premenstrual syndrome, right? And so there's a conscious effort to prepare them, conscious effort to psych them up and to make sure that the post-menstrual syndrome does not affect their growing up, right? Some get disoriented, some could be depressed, and what have you. There's another school of thought that says that it is also because probably people pay so much attention, so that people, when they are about experiencing it, okay, are overly concerned, and so these things happen. Whereas in Ghana, little attention is paid to it. And so the lady goes through, in fact, some of them never expect it. The only time they will realize is that somebody probably draws their attention to it, that they have soiled themselves. And that will be it. I'm not sure if the ladies here will be willing to share their first experience with us. I don't know. Is anybody, I'm not forcing anybody. Are you willing to confirm this assertion or not? How did your first menstrual period come along? And were you depressed? Did you get a sense of depression or what have you? So I've seen two hands up. Tend, I don't know whether that is your name. And then there's Nyamiche. So Tend first, Nyamiche, patient second, and then there's a third person, Josephine. All right, so let's do that. And then Precious will be the last person on this. So I guess I'm supposed to allow you to mute. Okay, so Tend, try again, unmute yourself and let me hear you.
I say yes, and Tend is my name. They're actually my initials. That's how come I write it like that.
Then please go ahead.
Okay, so my first menstrual period came, I think, when I was in JHS1. I didn't know what it was about because my family, my cousins were all in the house. I came back from school and I just went to the washroom and I realized that my panties were stained. I didn't know what it was about. My mom then had gone to work, she had not returned. So it was one of my cousins who was telling me that this is it, because she was already menstruating by then. So she was telling me that it could be my period. And I was scared because I didn't know how to go about it and all of that. So I even started crying. I remember crying that maybe I went to do something and this was the implications, or I don't know. So when my mom came back from work, that was when she was explaining to me that, okay, this is what it's about. So just try to take care of yourself. And then she was just educating me on it.
Right.
She was supposed to give me an egg, but she didn't.
Who said she was supposed to give you an egg?
That was what I heard. So she was supposed to give me an egg, but she didn't.
You know, you are eating more than enough eggs. Anyway, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your experience. So Patience, can I hear you?
Yes, my first experience was when I was in JHS2, and all my siblings and my aunties were in the house. My mom was not there, so my auntie saw that I have soiled myself. Immediately, she came to and she said, "Have you seen that there is something at the back of your dress?" I said, "What's that?" And she told me, "I am menstruating." I said, "What is it about?" And he said, like, it's part of girls. When you are like at early stage, it comes. And she taught me how to like manage it. And everyone was just looking at me. And I just ran away from the place. I was so ignorant about it.
Yeah. So, I mean, so the point essentially is that it passed without any qualm, let's say, without any anxiety, you weren't overly concerned. It just happened. You probably didn't have to be on medication because it was so painful and all that. All right, thank you very much. So I take Josephine and then Precious. Esther, you share your last with us. Yes, Josephine, can we hear you?
Yes, sir. Okay, sir, please. My own was so embarrassing because that time I was in class 6 and then primary 6, yeah. And
Okay.
we went for a march pass in town. My school, there was a program, so my school wanted us to go and inform the township about it. So we're holding this card and stuff. And some friends came around me. Josephine, did you pour it out your back? And so, what is that? So okay, I had some old ladies in my class, like they were having that experience. So immediately they took me away. They took me away from the march past something. We went back to campus, and then they gave me tea rolls. I had to use tea rolls, and I washed my uniform. I dried it. I was in the lavatory till it got dried. I wore it. Went back home before my mother taught me how to use the the pad and everything and gave me education on it. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, Josephine. Precious, can we also hear you?
Okay, so actually, mine, it happened when I closed from school. So I got home and then I was going to bed, like after school bathing. And then I realized I had told myself, so I was like, did I use something to hurt myself? Like maybe when I was running, did I fall down somewhere? Actually, I was scared because my mom wasn't around that time. And then I was the only one, so I was scared. Like I cried. I didn't know what to do. I finished bathing still. I didn't know what to do until my mom came home and she's like, this thing is normal, so why are you crying? And I was like, no. I had hurt myself and they had telling me it's normal. She had to sit me down and tell me that, oh, it's just menstrual. I shouldn't worry.
All right, so Precious, thank you very much. So the point essentially that I was trying to make, interesting, has been confirmed by many of you and your experiences. But in the West, it's like a month or two to your experience of the first menarche, right? You are so on and some, like I said, have to spend months or weeks in the hospital being cared for. You know, some of them are giving medication and all that because of this whole issue about premenstrual syndrome, right? So there's a whole structure that is developed to ensure that the first experience of the young lady is not so embarrassing, it's not so depressing, and what have you, right? So there's a bit of anxiety that comes with it. But in our case, I mean, it passes without noticing. Had it not been because physically you probably may have soiled yourself, physically but it didn't come in your case with any emotional distress and all those other things. As for these boys, I won't mind them. Okay, I have two extra hands. I don't know who they are. Precious and then Enoch. I don't know whether it's a new hand for Precious, but for Enoch, I don't know where his interest is. Let me allow him to talk. Enoch, yes.
Could we say that education plays a role in the way the Western world they feel? I think they are taught when they are getting to the state, they are taught, so they are aware something of that sort will happen. But in our part of the world, it comes by surprise. They experience it before they are given the talk. Can we say that?
You see, yes, and no. Because, you know, when you are ignorant of something, sometimes, and I mean, this is my personal experience, for example. So, and based on that personal experience, and I think sometimes it's my emotions and my emotions that plays games with me. So, for example, when you listen to some of these health talk shows, and probably they are discussing some particular sicknesses or whatever, within 5 or 30 minutes after listening to that thing, I suddenly begin to feel like it appears I have those symptoms, right? So again, but without me ever knowing of those things, I never had that experience. And so I think that because we're saying if they are exposed, but you see the thing about this whole menstrual thing, and I mean, and if you look at the 3 people or 4 people who share their experience, one person said hers start at primary 6, and that's on the average like 12 years. The other person said they started in GSS 1, another said GSS 2. So assuming that all of you went to school at the right ages, primary 6 was age 12, GSS 1 was age 13, and then GSS 2 was age 14. So for how long are you going to, for example, prepare these people? Because look at the gap, there's a gap of 2 years or 3 years, right, essentially. So I mean, I agree, because of the unpredictability, and because it's not like when you are 6, then it will start. When you are 8, then it will start. When it is 10, you will start. It happens based on how hormonal changes And you know our hormones react differently, right? I have a set of twins. Unfortunately or fortunately, there's a boy and a girl. And the girl's teeth started growing 6 months earlier than the boy's teeth. And the girl has had all her teeth now removed, outgrown, but the boy has so far had only one of his teeth being removed. Do you understand? So the point is that some of these things do happen at different times. I know of children who have their menses at age 9. But we also know that there are girls who also have their menses at age 15. And so it is very unpredictable. But I understand you when you say people talk to you and they begin to tell you some of the symptoms of these premenstrual symptoms, okay? Which when not properly managed, then this disorder may come. So you are perfectly right. In fact, to the extent that what we call the PDD, right, premenstrual dysphoric disorder, right? And this one, they say that it could be a very severe, sometimes disabling extension of the premenstrual symptoms. So, and it could be extended, right? And when you get to know, it could be, and I mean, it could be physical, it could be behavioral systems, you know, so that physically the person is in a state of discomfort, right? He appears not to be himself emotionally. He's disoriented, and it shows within even what he decides to do and what he decides not to do. I mean, this may take us all into, and in such cases, these are treated by the medical professionals. None of my respondents in this case ever had to end up in the hospital. I don't know, maybe Elisa, did you end up in the hospital because your hand is up? I mean, you can answer my question, and after you answer, you tell me what it is that made you raise your hand. Yes.
No, I didn't end up in the hospital.
Okay, so now go ahead and tell me what you wanted to tell me.
I wanted to add that premenstrual syndrome is not necessarily, like, it doesn't necessarily come like during your first period. It can come during like the ones that follow. So maybe it can be like a year later or something before you get it. But I know people like who actually have it in Ghana.
Oh, sure.
Like you can experience it, yes. Like
I can actually share a very personal experience with you. I mean, when I was doing undergraduate studies, and I did my undergraduate studies here, I had a colleague of mine. In fact, on every 28th day was more like a funeral for us. Right? It was so terrible. So terrible. And so, and I know, I mean, I think yesterday or so, there was this local health. They did this education on radio, and they talk about some of them. And then I think there's a condition that they mentioned that needed to be treated and what have you. Yeah, so I understand that argument as well. But for me, for this discussion, I think the emphasis was just how sociocultural factors may change, may influence our general understanding about health, right? And I'll give you probably a more typical, a more practical one afterwards. But there's Joyce here, so let me hear Joyce, and then we can continue.
Yes, when, I was admitted at the hospital when mine came.
Your first experience?
Yes, please. I had the diarrhea and I was vomiting too. So my mom was shouting like she thought I was pregnant or something. So they sent me to the hospital and I was bleeding at the same time, and I was having this diarrhea, watery diarrhea, and I was vomiting too. So, and it has been always like this, even like this age, right? It's always been like that. So when my period comes, it's like everybody, they bore me. I get angry easily and those stuff. So when my period comes,
so for you, these are the symptoms, and you need to learn to manage it. Because if because you are going through your premenstrual period, you get so angry with me and insult me. After your 5 days or 7 days, you want to come back and make friends with me. I won't be happy with you. So please learn how to manage your emotions. Thank you very much, Joyce. Nobody is going to bore you here. All right. So the point that we want to, people are sharing some of the experiences. There's a mood swing, we all know. Amina says, I was admitted to the hospital for about 4 days before my first period. Yeah, so that's one in a blue moon. I know of girls who had her first mens at age 10. Yes, that's true. And it's possible, yes. Mine started with the diarrhea. Okay, so I think that's what Joyce just shared. Enoch and girls, I didn't know why I shouldn't have read this message. Yeah, some also experience migraine. Yeah, that's true. And they have to, in fact, there are many people who have to be on medication as a way of trying to manage these things. Yes, so thank you very much. Now, another influence, which interesting, I guess, is now changing, but I think it is still quite predominant in many of us. This whole perception about weight gain and weight loss in Ghana as compared to what happens in the world. So for us in Ghana, a beautiful lady must not only be endowed intellectually, but must also be physically endowed, right? So a woman must have relatively large breast and must have a good bump, right? So that's our perception of beauty. And until recently, being slim was equated to being sick. And in fact, in the early 90s, when HIV was very predominant, as in the discourse, and the fear was there, if you were slim, like many of you today are aiming to be, having a flat tummy and all those other things, you are more likely to be accused of being an HIV carrier, right? And this whole perception, so I mean, from the part of a man, you know what that also meant. It meant that you must have a pot belly, you understand? So like the way this man is sitting here, and for many of us, it symbolized a sense of good living, right? But in the West, this is equated to unhealthy being. In fact, it is sickness. And so a lot of medication are being developed to trim down the fat in there. And in fact, I grew up knowing people who were actually investing in this tummy. And those who probably used to work in the formal sector, for them it was so nice, and women admired it, especially when they have the flying tie, and the flying tie then falls here. You know, so it gets to this place and then it will bend, and it hangs there. It was very attractive, and people were actually investing in having a pot belly. The lady here obviously wouldn't make good market. Nobody will want to go out with her. It would have been this one, right? The one on the left. On the right, no, she'll be out of market. She's a sick girl. She'll probably be a sickler. She's probably carrying HIV/AIDS, or probably she comes from a very poor home. She doesn't have enough food to eat, and what have you. And these are all cultural understanding. Admittedly, some of these values are changing. Now, ladies say that they want men with six-pack, some men who had flat tummy, men who can show their body and will not feel ashamed. Now, if you're a gentleman like me and you have this, you probably will feel ashamed. I have a slight pot belly and I'm struggling. Sometimes I have to struggle to decide what to wear, right? This whole consciousness is changing. And that's why we talk about the fact that, and I mean, these then were also the ideal figure. When we were seeing this as very disgusting, it happened to be the ideal physical figure for the West. Okay. Now, other factors that also affect health include race. So for those of us who are the Black race, there are certain diseases that are genetically prone to us. right, as compared to others. So for example, some diseases affect people of other races more than others. Two more examples here. We are saying that this could be genetic or reflect more of personal lifestyle or institutional inequalities. So I'm going, and this is more like an American bit. So I'm going to give, so for example, when it comes to fibroid, right, it is more of an African origin than among the Caucasians, right? Fibroid, sickle cell disease. So if you're a young lady and you are of the Black race, you are more likely to develop a fibroid than a Caucasian who is a lady, right? This is genetics. And sometimes you need to know this so that you know the precautions that ought to be taken so you are not. Another one is that African-American women are 3 times more likely to die during childbirth than a white woman. These may not necessarily be genetics, but it may also be a matter of personal lifestyle as well as institutional inequalities. So for example, if you're in America, we all know that with a level of racism that sometimes characterize the health service and delivery of these things, right? There's a greater likelihood that you may not receive the maximum care, right, that a white woman will receive during childbirth, right? At the same time, Black women who are pregnant may probably indulge in more dangerous health habits, personal lifestyle habits that may endanger their health as compared to the white woman, right? So you are more likely to have a Black woman who is pregnant and still be smoking than you probably have a white woman who is pregnant and be smoking. You are more likely to have a Black woman who may absent herself from attending antenatal care than a white woman who do. Beyond that, it could also be a matter of social inequality. So you talk to women, you talk to people who are sick, right? And they will not go to the hospital. Not because they don't know that the hospital they ought to go, but it's also because probably they cannot afford it. And sometimes there are certain barriers that the hospital, knowingly or unknowingly, places in assessing health. If I go to the hospital and you are speaking English to me and I can't speak English, I may better stay home, go to the drugstore. Because sometimes if I sit down and I talk to some of them, the amount they are spending on the out of the counter dispensing drugs as compared to the amount that they would have been charged, okay, to assess health in the formal sector. You realize that they are probably either spending almost the same amount or in some instances, slightly above what they would have paid. So for example, if you had a national health insurance card, you are guaranteed of seeing a medical doctor, irrespective of whatever sickness that you probably may be experiencing, right? You probably will not get all the drugs that you needed, okay? But you are guaranteed that you are going to be properly diagnosed. And if you cannot afford the drugs, they will write a prescription for you to go and buy. Is that okay? But this person, in addition to having the health insurance card, and sometimes they have even renewed it, will not go, but they will go to the counter and just go, and based on somebody's perception or mere analysis of what you are telling him, will give him certain drugs, which may be quite expensive, right? But if the person had gone to the hospital, sometimes also because of the time you spent. I mean, in Ghana currently, anytime you go to the hospital, you have to consider that, especially if you go to the public hospital, you have to consider that your day has ended. You are not coming back to work. Because you go to the hospital, the lab work will take like 4 or 5 hours before you go back to see the doctor. And the day has ended. right? So when the person considers that, then you feel like, okay, let me just work here and get some painkillers, and he's good. He's good. Age is also a very important one. The work we do is also very important. I've discussed income level and even gender, right? Gender is very, very important. So you know, age. There are some diseases that are age prone. So, for example, even though they are pediatric diabetes, people who are 40 years and above are more likely to have heart-related diseases, diabetes, and the rest. And in fact, even for us as men, 40 years and above, you are more likely to have issues with your prostate. And this is gender specific. It is more with men than women, right? The work you do also exposes you to certain diseases than others, and these and other things you should know, right? So I've discussed gender and health, right? Okay. Now, remember when we're doing the socio-demographic characteristics, I talked about